Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Lee Wilmot, a familiar face on the podcast. He's going to provide the insight into Tottenham Hotspur. Newcastle United travel down to the capital for the Saturday game, early kickoff. Lee, Happy New Year. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Happy New Year to you. Yeah, thanks for having me along. I'm keeping well, yes. I've had a very nice Christmas, a nice New Year. Back into work today for the first time in about a week. And things are looking pretty dire on the Tottenham front at the minute. I'm sure you and all the Newcastle fans out there are very much looking forward to a trip south on Saturday.
Yes, I think everyone will be. But as I was explaining to you before we started recording, we've done the match preview, and me and Sam Mulner, who was filling in this week for John Gibson, both just kind of came to the conclusion that although we're confident of Newcastle beating Spurs and we expect them to beat Spurs given everything that Newcastle come into this game with, we just don't know what kind of Tottenham's going to turn up because their forward line is absolutely clinical when they're on form, but their back line decimated by injuries, conceding goals. I think it's 18 you've conceded in the last 6 games, something like that. So what kind of Spurs can we expect on Saturday?
Who knows? Who knows what sort of Spurs you can expect? I've got no idea. You're absolutely right that I don't know why you've invited me on the podcast. I just have no idea what's going on. We'll have a chat for 20 minutes, shall we? Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we're on song, the forward line is outstanding. I think the problem we've got at the minute, and there's lots of excuses being made, and they're legitimate excuses as well with the number of injuries that we've got and the number of problems we've got in the back line. But we're not firing when it comes to our attacking prowess either. We've got problems going forward. We've got massive problems at the back, and it's just not a great time to be a Spurs fan at the minute. We're 11th, 12th in the table. Things don't look like they're getting any better. Newcastle really firing at the minute as well. Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, the likely lads that we always talk about on these podcasts when I've been on with you that we're all scared of. It's I don't know. I don't know what to expect really from Tottenham this weekend. You would like to think we would look good going. There will be goals. There will be goals at both ends. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Yeah, and you'll probably be happy to know, and you may already know this, Fabian Schär will be missing from Newcastle's back line on Saturday because he picked up another yellow card in the game against Manchester United, which means he's suspended, and Newcastle haven't got a replacement for him. So it's most likely going to be Lloyd Kelly who comes in alongside Dan Burn, effectively two left-sided centre-backs playing as a partnership. That worries me. That's my only concern going into this game. And that is probably going to be music to the ears of you, but also probably Dominic Solanke as well.
Yeah, well, Dom, he could do with a goal really. His all-round play for Spurs this season has been excellent, and he's brought something to the team that I don't think many Tottenham fans would have expected. I mean, everyone knows what he's capable of in front of goal, what he's done for Bournemouth. I think his all-round play, his work rate, and how he presses from the front, and how he kind of get things moving from the front, and is that kind of archetypal striker for an Ange Postecoglou system. Has probably surprised quite a few people, but he could do some more goals. That's what he is in the team for. Like, you look back at when we beat Southampton 5-0 and he barely had a shot. We scored 5 goals, and our main striker wasn't contributing to any of them. So yeah, he needs a goal, and if he can get at that back line for Newcastle, then yeah, that'll be great for Spurs. But yeah, it's going the other way that I'm a bit more concerned, really.
Is Ange under pressure? Is this a must-win yet for him?
Yes and no. I think given where we are in the table, you have to expect him to be under pressure because we're nowhere near where we should be. And as I've said, there are mitigating circumstances, but at the same time, you look back at the transfer window, and we were supposed to kind of add that strength and depth that we needed that was clearly lacking last year when we started like a house on fire in the first 10 games and then dropped off when we'd had injuries. It was supposed to be different when we added players in the summer. Lucas Bergvall, of course, came in. You got Archie Gray coming in. You got Dom Solanke coming in. The problem with the two of those, obviously, was that they're 18-year-olds, and they did add strength in depth, but they weren't expected to be kind of given so much time straight away. They were the ones to kind of bed in slowly. Did we do enough in the summer transfer window? You can argue no. If we're bringing in two 18-year-olds that we're then expecting so much from early on in their careers. So yeah, we're still lacking. We're still lacking that strength in depth. We still don't have the squad. You've seen Mickey van der Ven's got injured. Christian Romero's got injured. Ben Davies is now injured. It looked like Radu Dragusin was injured, but managed to make a miraculous recovery to play against Wolves at the weekend. It was Sunday. Yes, I'm lost for days at this time of year. You never know if it's the weekend or midweek. So yeah, we clearly don't have the strength that we need in depth at the minute. So yes, he is under a little bit of pressure, but did we do enough in terms of spending money behind this? Did Daniel Levy do enough? Did Johan Lang do enough behind the scenes to give him the squad that he needed to compete at the very top of the league? Probably not. So where does the blame lie?
It's funny listening to you, because if you remove the names that you're talking about and the club you're talking about, you could quite easily be talking about Newcastle United. A month ago, Eddie Howe was under a little bit of pressure. He really needed to win the majority of the last 4 or 5 games that they actually have done, because they'd gone on such a bad run against teams that you expected them to beat, and they hadn't beaten. They were playing quite poorly as well against certain teams, and things weren't looking good for him. He's turned it around, and interestingly, we could be sat here in a month's time saying the same thing about Ange. The table's still quite tight and still congested, and a couple of wins takes you up the tail. But also, this time last year, Newcastle United was decimated by injuries. There's questions over the transfer market as well. Has Eddie Howe been backed enough? So there's little comparisons that you can make between the two sides. Not that our listeners will be offering you any sympathy at all.
Of course not.
It's quite interesting when you raise those kind of issues. But looking at the injury list, I mean, goodness me, I knew it was bad because I've seen Ange talk about it here and there. But having a proper look at it today, I can see why it's been used as an excuse, because it's actually not an excuse. It's a full-blown reason, right?
Well, I've just mentioned the kind of your two first-choice centre-backs there, and then the next backup, I suppose, in Ben Davies also out. I haven't even mentioned the fact that our first-choice goalkeeper's out injured as well. And I think that's a fault of the club that we didn't have. I mean, Fraser Forster's he's getting on now. I've never been his biggest fan. He's made some crucial saves for us in the time that he's been deputising for Guillermo Vicario, but he's not the best standing goalkeeper that you could. If you look at Liverpool and they've got Kevin Kelleher to just come in when Alisson's injured, what a number 2 he is to have sitting there. So yeah, we're really lacking. But yeah, as you're right, we've done this before, and Newcastle have been, as you say, decimated by injuries. Everyone has these problems. It's about how you get through it, and I think the one point I'd like to make about Ange being under pressure is that Mickey van der Ven, I think most fans in the Premier League would say that he is probably on his day one of the best defenders that there are in the Premier League, and we do hugely miss him when he's not there. He's so integral to the way we play under Postecoglou with his pace and his recovery time. You can play that high line and get away with it when he's in your team. You can't do that if he's not in the team. And that's the criticism I have a little bit of Ange, in that, yes, he's got his philosophy, he's got his principles, there's a way he wants to play football, and he's been questioned about it so many times, and he said, look, I'm fed up with the questions, I'm not going to change, I've said it, this is the way I play, this is how I'm going to keep playing, this is how Tottenham will play under me. The criticism I have is that it doesn't quite work when Mickey van der Ven's not in the team. So you've got to change something somewhere to adapt to the players that you have available. And fair play to him. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to stick by his principles. But I think we've seen in the last few weeks just why we're struggling with the injuries that we've got and the system that he plays. The players that he's playing in that system.
Yeah, he's maybe going to die on that hill, isn't he? But Mickey van der Ven probably quite happy he's not playing this Saturday, because he hates Alexander Isak, doesn't he?
Yeah. Who doesn't hate Alexander Isak?
That is. I mean, is he the man that you're fearing the most?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I tried to get him in my fantasy team last week, but it's too expensive. I couldn't find a way to get him in. But I managed to get Anthony Gordon in the end, and picked up an assist for me against Man United, obviously. But He's had his injury issues, hasn't he, Isak? He seems to. Has he been available most of this season? I think is that fair to say?
Yeah, he got injured after a game against Fulham. Probably a game he shouldn't have played in because the injuries picked up the game prior, but he got some injections or something to play through. It didn't quite pay off, and then he missed, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 games. But he's been back since probably middle of November, maybe something like that. So since his return, he's just been absolutely brilliant because he started the season quite slowly, but since he's come back into the side, he's been on absolute fire.
Yeah, I was going to say you kind of. He would be one of the first names on the team sheet when you're putting it in right at the very beginning of the season. I think he would have been a lot of people's minds. I'm talking about FPL again. I think he would have been in a lot of people's teams at the beginning of the season, and then he was quite, as you say, quite quiet at the start of the season. But I've just got his stats up here because he has been on fire. As you say, it's like 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 goals in his last 11 games in the Premier League. It's just extra. He just scores goals for fun, doesn't he? And he's done it throughout his career.
And the beauty of it as well, he's actually terrible one-on-one. He misses the easiest one-on-one chances. I don't know if you saw the game against Manchester United, and he was clean through it, and he just chipped into the hands of Onana. And BBC Radio Newcastle's John Anderson, former player, he's played over 200 times for the club. He really gets wound up by it. And his commentary that evening was, "Oh, he's it again. It's a one-on-one." And it's scary to think that if he can just work that out during the week in training, how many goals he could actually have. Because as you say there, 11 in the last 11. But in that time, I can probably think of 3 or 4 one-on-ones where he's scuffed it or he's not put it in the back of the net. So imagine what he could do if he was actually as good as Haaland, maybe one-on-one. He is scary. And I think with Archie Gray at centre back, I'm assuming he's going to have to continue to play there, and the injuries you've got at the back, he could have a really successful day on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Archie Gray is a good player. He's good on the ball. He's having to learn to play at centre back. He spent most of his season last year at Leeds playing at right back. Obviously, his natural position is central midfield. He's having to play at centre back for us this season just because of the injuries that we've got. An 18-year-old who's not used to playing at centre back. It's not ideal, is it really? But yeah, he's great on the ball, Archie. He's kind of fearless. Doesn't mind being pressured by strikers. He'll try and find his way out of trouble. Can make mistakes doing it, but Ange wants him to play that way. He wants his team to play that way, so he'll continue to do that. Dragusin will be the one that will have to deal with aerial battles. I think you won't ask Archie Gray to do that very much, but yeah, I think Isak's pace will have the beating of both of them. And then you're likely to see Porro playing on the right, and it'll be Jed Spence on the left because Destiny Udogie is now injured as well, likely to be out for a couple of months. Just another one to add to the backline injury problems that we've got. But I like a big fan of Jed Spence. Kind of renaissance of Jed Spence at Spurs this season because he looked like he was going to be bombed out, as it were. He's been on loan to Genoa and he went on loan to Leeds and didn't look like he had a Tottenham future. But by all accounts, he appears to have knuckled down over pre-season. Worked his way back into Ange's thinking, and I've really liked what I've seen of him since he's. But again, he's naturally a right back, and he's going to be asked to play at left back. So you got Jed Spence and Archie Gray as the two kind of left and left centre back. Getting in and down Newcastle's right is probably going to be where Eddie Howe looks to exploit us.
Yeah, and this is why I'm expecting Newcastle United to win on Saturday. I got a bit of abuse when I was talking about Newcastle versus Manchester United, and I said this is the game they should be winning. Like if you remove the badge and you remove the team, look at the form, look at the spirit, look at the team morale. This is the game that Newcastle United should be winning. Thankfully, they did do, and it's the same on Saturday. I think there's a fine line between kind of arrogance and expectation, but for Newcastle United, if they want to be challenging for the top 6, they have to be beating a Tottenham side when they are in this kind of doom and gloom space, when they are in this spiral. Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I would put Newcastle as favourites on Saturday. We're not in great form. We've got so many issues to deal with. Bentancur stupidly got booked against Wolves on Sunday as well, so he's going to be suspended as well, having only just come back from his 7-game ban, then goes and gets his 5th yellow card in his 2nd game back to spend another game on the sideline. So he's going to be missing from the midfield. Thankfully, we do have a bit of cover in the midfield area. But again, you're looking at the likes of Papsar, Yves Bissouma, James Maddison. Does Kulusevski play in the 10 or does he play in the forward line? He's been playing in the forward line of late because we've had a bit of an issue. So that's three then. Sarr, Bissouma and Maddison. You think, well, they have to play because then there's no one else unless you put Kulusevski in the mix. So yeah, you could probably write down what the Spurs team is going to be on paper right now.
Well, it's interesting because Man United, obviously, they played Casemiro and Eriksen together from the start, and that's just asking for trouble, pedestrian.
Yeah.
But we're also asking for trouble, in my view, is when you play two in the centre against Newcastle's midfield three, especially when they're in this great form. I think the midfield has the risk to be overrun from a Tottenham point of view if indeed Ange sticks with the two in the middle in terms of numbers as he did against Wolves. Is that what is going to happen though? Will he play just two in the middle?
I'd like him. So we've on occasion this season we've played Maddison and Kulusevski as a kind of with a one pivot, a Sarr or a Bissouma sitting in front of the defence, and the two more creative players. And we've looked really good as an attacking force with that. I think he's reluctant to do it just purely because of the defensive problems we've got. I think he feels like he needs a second, more defensive-minded midfielder in there. So I think that's why you'll see Bissouma and Sarr playing with either Maddison or Kulusevski in front of them as the three. If we had Van der Ven and Romero at centre-back at home, albeit against a good Newcastle side, I think you might see him go for it and play the two more attack-minded midfielders, and it would probably be an even more exciting game in that regard. Newcastle might not like it that way. You certainly wouldn't like it with the two first choice centre backs being there, obviously, and we can play the way we want to play. But I think Newcastle get on the front foot on Saturday, really get in Spurs' face and show that they mean business. I'm concerned. concerned.
Do you look at Newcastle's midfield with Tonali, Bruno and Joelinton again in great form? That for me was the key area against Manchester United. If Newcastle managed to win that early on, that was the game won in my opinion. And they just overran the midfield, especially in the first half an hour. When Manu came on, Man United managed to tighten up a little bit, but the damage was already done. And for the large part anyway, Newcastle still managed to win that battle. You know, do you look at those three and think, yeah, I don't know if Tottenham fancy that kind of battle on Saturday?
It's that word there, battle. You get in James Maddison's face early on, and you put a reducer from Joelinton on James Maddison, really show him that he's there. James Maddison might not fancy it. And again, if you ruffle Bissouma's feathers a little bit, he's got the capability to kind of lose his discipline. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Those three, Guimaraes, Joelinton and Tonali as well. I think it's a midfield to be worried about. A midfield that they're very good players. They're clearly very good players, very talented players, but they're not afraid to give a little bit back, are they? All three of them not afraid to give a little bit back. And if they really get in amongst Tottenham on Saturday, they could win it early doors.
Yes, well, fingers crossed they do. Just a reminder, guys, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Protect any of your brand new spanking devices that you might have got over Christmas by subscribing to NordVPN, and you also help support the podcast. The description box has the link in to get a discounted offer. It's well worth taking advantage of. And as I said, you help support the podcast, which is much appreciated. You mentioned there, Lee, getting in the faces of Spurs' top players. Newcastle United in recent weeks have scored early goals. But again, I don't even think it's about scoring an early goal. I think it's about just going in hard in a challenge in the first 30 seconds. What effect does that have on the terraces? Because things aren't going very well at the moment. Is it fair to say that certain sections are a little bit more critical of Ange than others? But if it is an early goal or early kind of settlers, for want of a better phrase, that might just bring the negativity to the front.
Yep, absolutely. The negativity has been there for a few weeks now, just purely because I think we expect better. I don't think there are going to be certain fans who expect the world and expect us to be world beaters, as it were. But I think majority of us know Spurs are not at the level of Manchester City or Liverpool or an Arsenal at the moment. Chelsea have managed to turn it around. So you would everyone would expect us to be up there in that top 4, 5, 6, and we're a long way off it at the moment. A long way off it. But yeah, they're conceding goals. The tide can turn inside the stadium. There were a few boos at the end of the game with Wolves on Sunday. Wasn't a brilliant performance, as I said to you at the very beginning of the podcast. We're clearly struggling at the back, but we're struggling going forward as well. We're not scoring enough goals to win matches because we know we're going to concede them. And the all-round play can be a bit laboured and slow sometimes as we look to get forward. So yeah, it can turn a bit toxic sometimes. It's not been too bad, but there have been murmurings over the last few weeks of just getting a bit quiet inside there and a few boos coming out. So yeah, it'll be interesting if Newcastle do score early. It'd be interesting to see if you can really shut the crowd up from minute one.
Well, fingers crossed they can do. It'll be a sold out away end, and I imagine quite a few of Newcastle United fans will be staying on as well in the capital because they'll head to Arsenal in midweek for the semi-final of the League Cup. But I'm looking forward to this one. I really, really am. It's just going to be interesting to see how Spurs handle that intensity, which I hope Newcastle United can bring right from the off, essentially. How do you think this one's going to go then?
God, do I have to be honest? You know, as I said earlier in the pod, I think there will be goals. I think Spurs will score. I don't think Newcastle will keep Spurs out. I just don't think Spurs will be able to keep Newcastle out more than we can keep more than Newcastle can keep Spurs out. It'll be a high scoring game. I think. Reluctantly, I'd probably say Newcastle to win it 3 or 4-2.
Do you know what? That's the third 3-2 score prediction we've had about this game on this podcast. I've gone for 3-2 as well because I do think there'll be goals, but I think Newcastle are just in a better place, and given everything that Spurs are dealing with, they really should be winning this game. Just briefly, how will Spurs approach the game in terms of having the ball? Is it more possession based, or is it give it to Newcastle and invite Newcastle on?
No, they'll keep the ball. Spurs will play that way. You'll probably find that we'll have more of the possession in the entire game. What we do with it is the big key. I think I remember writing a story on Football.London a few weeks back when. So what are we now? We're 19 games in. I think it was after the 14 game mark. I wrote a story which said the 7 games where we've had the most possession out of the 14, we'd got something like 0.3 points per game. Whereas the 7 games where we'd had the least possession out of the 14, we were averaging something like 2 points per game. So it's hard. Ange wants to control the play, but the problem we found is we're not doing enough with it when we have the ball so far this season. So, perhaps it might be ideal to let Newcastle come onto us, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, do you know what? Honestly, it baffles me so much, especially in the last few weeks when teams just haven't sat back and done that low block against Newcastle, because that's where they really struggle. And Leicester didn't do it, and other teams haven't done it. It's just like, all right, if you're not going to play in the way that really stops Newcastle, then I'm all for it. Yeah. Spurs having more of the ball and trying to attack Newcastle and allowing Newcastle to hit them on the counter, it really is something I think Eddie Howe will want to see, because he knows that's where his side are best at. Gordon on the transition, Joe Linton carrying the ball forward, Tonali sitting as that anchor man and sweeping up, trying to break up the play. Hey, if Spurs want to play that way, then yeah, go on.
We spoke about the fans though, and the kind of the nature in the stadium. If at home, if you allow an away team to do that, you'll hear the fans turn as well. You can't just play like that at home as a team like Spurs. And I don't want to get all big about Spurs and we're a big team, this, that, and the other. We simply can't just do low block and let Newcastle have the ball when we're in our home stadium in front of 60,000 fans. So I get it.
No, I can understand that. And the in-laws were having a conversation about Spurs being Spursy. I mean, is that?
I hate that. I hate that. Every team is capable of being Spursy, shall we say? I just hate that it's a thing, because we can be worse than most, I suppose, when it comes to being great one day and then awful the next. So
that's football, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
just to finish off then, Lee, just sum up your feelings about Saturday in a sentence. So how are you feeling about it?
Petrified. I hate playing Newcastle at the best of times. They are one of our bogey teams. I dislike games at that 12:30 on a Saturday as well. It's got the potential to ruin my weekend right from the very off. It's not like it can just be right at the end of 4:30 on a Sunday. It could ruin the weekend. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but you never know with Spurs. You never know with Spurs. You might just get an incredible performance where we turn you over 4-0, but I don't think it's going to happen this time.
That would be very Spursy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, Lee, thank you for popping onto the podcast and providing the insight into Tottenham ahead of Newcastle's visit to the capital on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff. You can catch all the build-up over on chroniclelive.co.uk, Eddie Howe's press conference, and of course the live match blog as well. Hit thumbs up on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe as well, leave us a rating and review on the podcast channel. And if you want that NordVPN subscription to help keep yourself safe, all your devices, hit the link in the description box for a heavily discounted offer. Once again, thanks to Lee, thanks to you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon.